You already know what to do if you have a two-way radio communication failure while you're IFR, but what if you lose your communication and navigation capabilities in IFR conditions? Let's talk about how that might happen, and then we'll talk about your options if it does. As you know, the instrument scan is the foundation for a good instrument pilot. As you scan the flight instrument and engine gauges, you should have the habit of including the ammeter in your scan. And that's because if your alternator gives up the ghost, your radios and other electronic equipment will follow soon after. The actual amount of time you'll have before they fail depends on how soon you notice the problem, how many radios and lights you have on, and the size and health of the battery installed in your airplane. Now, it's true that the new Skyhawks have a volts light in the annunciator panel to tell you when you have a problem, and the older airplanes have a red warning light. But did you check your warning indicator during the pre-flight to make sure the light isn't burned out? And let me ask you a question. If you haven't developed the habit of periodically checking your ammeter, when do you think you'll notice you have an electrical problem? Well, you guessed it. Your first indication of a failed alternator will probably be when the radios start getting weak or flickering on and off. Now, another way you could lose all your avionics is if the avionics master switch fails. If you have an avionics master switch, just one flip of that switch will make all your radios come to life or go to bed. This is usually a good thing, but it can be a bad thing. Since all your avionics passes through this switch, if it decides to take a day off, all your radios will take a holiday along with it. Yet another way for you to end up in a no radio situation is from an electrical fire. If the fire has burnt the wires that power your avionics, once again, you'll lose all your radios. Okay, there you are, all alone in the clouds on an IFR flight plan, and all your avionics have gone dark. Is it time to pack it in and say sayonara? Heck no, there's lots you can do. Remember how we talked about the value of a handheld transceiver in the event of lost communications in the clouds? Well, that transceiver just became doubly valuable when all your radios go dark. Use it to dial up the last frequency you were on and tell them your situation. If your transmitter isn't strong enough to reach the last controller, try the emergency frequency 121.5. Most airliners monitor this frequency, and one flying overhead may hear you and be able to relay messages. Or a nearby tower or flight service station may be able to hear you. If you can communicate with ATC at all, even if it has to be relayed through someone else, your situation becomes a lot better. Because you're on an IFR flight plan, ATC has a pretty good idea of where you are. Even without a transponder, there's a good chance radar can pinpoint your position by the energy reflected off your airplane. If you have both communication and radar contact, the controller should be able to vector you. So getting back safely to Earth is looking more likely. If your handheld has VOR capability, that's even better. You should be able to navigate on your own as well as communicate. Another way to reestablish communications is to use your cell phone. As you remember, you can find phone numbers for ATC and flight service station facilities in the back of your airport facilities directory. If you can't get through on those numbers, or you can't find your airport facility directory, try dialing 1-800-WEATHER-BRIEF. The flight service station specialist who answers the phone won't mind that you're not really after a weather briefing. As a last resort, try dialing 911. It just might get you through to someone who can help. Another tool to help you out of this jam is a handheld GPS. It won't do much for you in the communications arena, but it'll sure help you navigate. Now let's say you're having a really bad day. You can't get either a handheld radio or a cell phone to work. This is where a good weather briefing can save your bacon. If you don't have any way to communicate or navigate, dead reckoning to an area of reasonably good weather might be your best option. Part of your pre-flight weather briefing should be to find an escape hatch, an area with VFR conditions that you could get to in the event of lost radios. We've mentioned it before, but it's always a good idea to carry a set of VFR charts along with you for the area you're flying in. In this situation, knowing where the high terrain is can literally save your life. If you can't find VFR weather, you may have to do a letdown through the clouds to get below the cloud deck. Having the VFR charts will help you dead reckon to an area of lower, flat terrain for the letdown. In fact, if you're flying near the coast, you should try to dead reckon out over the ocean and let down through the cloud deck there, where the terrain won't be an issue at all. So even if you do have a total radio failure, you can see that with modern and not so modern technology, you actually have quite a few options. You can also see that paying close attention during a weather briefing makes sure you have the information you need to get back safely on the ground.